Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. Alien abductions became popularised in the 1960s and 70s, but there were claims of abductions from decades earlier. One of the earliest publicised cases were Betty and Barney Hill in 1961 and Antonio Villas Boas in 1957. Abductees often report being taken aboard extraterrestrial spacecraft, where they are subjected to invasive medical procedures, and many abductees recall the events through hypnosis. Common features of abduction reports include hours of missing time, vivid memories of surgery and examinations, beings with large heads and black almond-shaped eyes. The following are just two of the many cases where people's lives turned upside down after encountering aliens. Officer Herbert Schirmer. In the early morning hours of December 3rd, 1967, an incident occurred along Highway 63 near Ashland, Nebraska, that would forever change the life of 22-year-old Police Sergeant Herbert Schirmer. Little did Schirmer know, when he began his overnight patrol shift that evening, that he would soon have an experience beyond his comprehension. Around 2:30 a.m., Schirmer noticed a set of blinking red lights emanating from what he assumed was a stopped truck along the lonely highway. As he approached the lights, prepared to offer assistance, Schirmer realized the source of the illumination was not a truck at all, but rather a metallic disc-shaped object hovering approximately 6 to 8 feet above the road. The craft, between 15 and 20 feet in diameter, had a shiny, polished aluminium surface and a catwalk that encircled its perimeter. The pulsating red lights shone out through windows along the exterior. Officer Schirmer brought his patrol car to a stop and stared in astonishment at the bizarre object. The mysterious craft began to slowly ascend vertically into the air, emitting a high-pitched siren sound and displaying a fiery glow along its underside. The sergeant watched in awe as the UFO gradually rose above the highway until shooting straight up into the night sky and vanishing from sight. Filled with a mixture of shock, confusion and curiosity, Officer Schirmer exited his vehicle and inspected the section of road where the craft had been hovering. He then continued his shift, returning to the police station where he logged the inexplicable sighting in the station book. Saw a flying saucer at the junction of Highway 6 and 63, believe it or not. Little did he know the real strangeness was yet to come. Later that morning, Schirmer noticed he had developed a peculiar headache and buzzing sensation in his head. Upon inspecting his neck in the mirror, he discovered a red 2-inch long welt just below his left ear. In the hours and days that followed, fragmented memories of the incident began to surface in Schirmer's mind. Schirmer realized that he'd had 20 minutes of lost time from his experience, and a short time later underwent hypnosis by Wyoming psychologist R. Leo Sprinkle as part of the Colorado Project. Under hypnosis, shocking details of his experience came into full view. According to his hypnotic recollections, after initially observing the craft from his car, Schirmer was escorted out of his vehicle and into the UFO by several small humanoid beings, between 4 and 5 feet tall. Their appearance was like anything the young officer had ever seen. Greyish-white skin, cat-like eyes that didn't blink, elongated heads and slit-like mouths. They wore silver-grey uniforms with gloves and helmets, featuring antennas on the left side. An emblem depicting a winged serpent adorned their chests. Schirmer was given a tour of the inner workings of the craft by the apparent leader of the beings. The entity communicated details about their origins and mission on Earth through a combination of mental and physical communication, facilitated in part by the antenna on his helmet. After approximately 10 minutes aboard the UFO, Schirmer was returned to his patrol car with hazy memories and vague warnings that the alien visitors would be monitoring him periodically. In the aftermath of his experience, Schirmer struggled to make sense of what had transpired. Local police chief Bill Velaskin visited the alleged encounter site and retrieved a small metallic artifact for analysis. Scientists concluded it was likely just ordinary earthly material. Over the years, Schirmer would periodically undergo hypnosis to extract more details from his subconscious about that fateful early morning. The bizarre tale of his contact with alleged extraterrestrial visitors will ultimately have lasting effects on his life and career. Skeptics claim Schirmer's story was confabulated or the product of an overactive imagination. Yet those who worked closely with the respected officer had difficulty reconciling how such a firmly grounded, reputable policeman could fabricate such an outlandish account. Researchers who hypnotically regressed Schirmer wondered if his narrative was factual or the results of deep mental conditioning by the unusual beings. In the absence of definitive evidence, the unbelievable events of that winter morning along a Nebraska highway remained shrouded in mystery. Herbert Schirmer maintained until his passing that he truly did encounter beings from another world who would forever alter his understanding of the universe and mankind's place within it. Brenda Butler. One Weird World viewer has confirmed this pattern of repeated abductions as occurring within her own life. Brenda Butler lives in Ottawa Valley in Ontario, Canada, and has written to us with her account of having been an abductee of extraterrestrial visitors since she was 8 years old. Brenda relates that at that age, she and her brother used to sleep at their granny's house on the weekends. They enjoyed the breaks and loved to sleep by their grandmother's pot-belly stove. One night when Brenda was lying in her sleeping bag, she heard her name being called, then an instruction to go to the back kitchen. She did so, and then felt herself pulled to the barn at the back of the house, which was near a big field. On reaching the barn, Brenda hid behind a bale of hay in the hayloft, then watched as the barn door swung open. Her account continues that there stood 3 beautiful ladies dressed in white gowns with gold-braided belts. There was a radiant light coming from the figures that surrounded them. She was told to come down from the hayloft, whereupon one of the women took one of her arms and the other took the other arm, and the third walked behind them. Brenda was led to the open field, where a ship was present, and as she continued up the ramp, the 3 female figures disappeared, and she was there alone. On entering the ship, she was confronted with a seemingly male being, dressed in blue and with blonde hair. He told Brenda that she belonged to them, and that was where the encounter ended. Brenda remembers that she was immediately back in her sleeping bag. Of her many recurrent abduction experiences, she relates this particular memory. She remembers that in July of 1994, she had come home from a hard day's work and decided to go to bed at 9 p.m. She was tired and it was also very hot outside, so she decided to sleep on top of the covers. As she lay on her bed wide awake, she saw a bright light enter into her room. She felt that she was frozen from her neck down, but she could still move her head, and as she looked higher up towards the window, she watched her own body lifting up. As she was now bodily heading towards the window, she became scared and closed her eyes. She was now on the outside of the window and heading up towards the sky. As this was happening, she watched as the house got smaller and smaller as she went higher and higher. She states that she was fully awake at this time and thought to herself, "Please don't drop me," as she watched the house disappear. Within minutes, she closed her eyes again and heard it click, and, on opening her eyes, found herself on all fours on a platform resembling a phone booth. Brenda stood up and noticed there were a few steps, which she walked down. As she did so, she looked to her left and saw a huge corridor that went forever. The astonished thought ran through her head that this was a massive ship. Staring all around her and walking forward, she noticed another staircase, but it twisted around and around endlessly. She felt amazed, especially in light of the fact that she was wide awake to witness this strange structure. She also noticed that there were huge windows, but they were blocked out, and there was no one around, or at least she couldn't see anyone. The floors in the ship were metallic grey, and the walls were the same, and the interior of the ship appeared very clean. As she turned around, in an instant she was back in her own bed, with no explanation as to why she'd been transported on this strange trip. Brenda estimates that she'd been the subject to at least 5 or more abductions, and it says that she has been experimented on. At one stage she believed that all the sodium had been removed from her body. Over one weekend she suffered with very bad pains in her legs, and repeatedly consulted doctors who gave her analgesics. By Tuesday morning, a blood test showed, according to a doctor, that all her sodium had been removed. She then recalled the moment when she was lying on a table and heard voices saying that she had tough skin, that they would have to put the needle in to take out the liquid. Brenda's experiences do seem to align with those of other abductees.